sin. You know why? It's a sin, and I blame myself for that too, because I'm part and parcel of that. I really am. I mean, I didn't know who my district person was, because they never did anything enough to be written up saying, oh, this person did this in the 86th district.
Yeah, and, the only thing they really know about the person is they're a D or an R next to their name.
That's right.
That's about it.
That's
they
exactly
couldn't
right.
tell you what the bills they had proposed, what they really stood for, a part of their platform. They couldn't tell you anything about them.
And how small-minded we are as citizens that we only vote Democrat or Republican because that's the way you're registered. Isn't that small-minded? I'm a registered Democrat. Why? They won't let me register as an independent. They won't let me register as a rabble-rousing party. They won't let me register as these things. And I'd love to register as the rabble-rousers, somebody that can make people think. And that's what I think my job is. My job is to make people think. My job is to bring to your attention that there are some inadequacies in this world. There are some fallacies in this world. Don't believe everything that you hear. Don't believe everything. I have a nephew. I love him. He's my nephew. His mother was almost like my mother raising me as a child. But the man is so one-sided. The man is so anti-Democrat, and yet he was born into a family where and I tell you the truth, I'm almost embarrassed for him, because I think the memory of his grandfather and my father, his other grandfather, and his father, who were all union people that worked their way up, and I'm not a union pusher, don't get me wrong, but these people were the blue-collar people that helped make this country, and in my opinion, he abandoned their lifestyles to go and sit there and back the heavily rich conservative groups. And I always said to him kiddingly, you're not rich enough to be a Republican. And he took umbrage with that. But again, he and I constantly discuss politics on Facebook, and we're constantly writing each other back and forth, because I don't want to discuss it with him on the phone, because we wind up talking over each other and nothing gets accomplished. So we write it down. He's a very bright guy. He's a University of Connecticut graduate, got his master's degree. Al is a very bright young man. Well, he's not a young man anymore. He's almost he was only 9 years between us. 9 years between us. But he's a bright guy. But there are times I don't know what he does. He must study politics in his spare time. He's got a full-time job, but he must study. But he reads anything that's right-wing, that's against the left. That's what he reads. That's what he quotes. He doesn't look at fair. I don't think there's a fair bone. I don't think he looks at things fairly. I really don't, and it bothers me. And I try to, and he's saying to me, "Oh, you're all left. You're all left." The reason I'm all left right now is because the right sucks. I hate to say it, but the conservative right is really they're biting dust. They're biting dust, because all I hear is almost like sour grapes, because they lost the election. Sour grapes. They have no leader and they're talking now. Listen to this combination. Maybe Dick Cheney and Sarah Palin in 2012. You've got to be out of your mind. You've got to be out of your mind. And to me, Sarah Palin must be a wonderful woman. She must be a wonderful wife. She must be a wonderful mother. She is not a good politician. She is not somebody I'd like to represent my country. And that's the reason I did not vote for John McCain. I liked John McCain, but I didn't vote for him because I said, if this man, anything happens to him, we're left in the hands of a true amateur with no formal education per se, that would make her someone of intellectual value. Obama may not have done anything in his life as far as being a leader is concerned, but he is a lawyer. He was an activist lawyer, and he was in the Senate. Not that he did much in the Senate, but he's an intellect, and Sarah Palin is not. So I have to think that intellect has to supersede dumb-elect. Can you call it that? Can you call it? Is there such a word as dumb-elect? I'm going to make it up right now. So I don't know, John. Maybe it's me. Maybe it's me. What's our phone number?
561-228-4020. 561-228-4020 is phone lines.
Yeah, and if they want to join the chat room, get on the chat room, and John will take your messages. If you got anything that's interesting, I'll certainly put it across on the air.
Yeah, we're on the Twitter and the Facebook right now, back and forth across there with some interesting comments.
What did I say wrong this time?
Well, they're debating on whether or not they would support Palin if she were to run for office. And I guess a lot of that's going to come down to that she resigned early as governor of Alaska.
Oh, she gave up.
Yeah, so I'm sure that's going to come into it.
Of course.
Some of the other,
But you see, this is the fact she used poor judgment. I mean, to me, if you want to really be, she was only in office 2 years as a governor, 2.5 years.
Yeah, I think she did a total of 3.5 years.
Total. I mean, and 1 year of that, she was running for office.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, at least half that year she ran for office.
All right, so you got a total, and she didn't complete anything, she completed nothing also. I mean, okay, Obama was in the Senate 2 years and he was running for office. That's okay, that's fine. Guess what?
Well, I think her supporters, the one thing that she did accomplish was the greatest challenge was for her to oust the former governor. I think
Well, he was
that
very strong. He was entrenched.
Yeah, and for her to do that, that shows you got to have a set.
Well, yeah, well, here's the other thing, though. Also, the fact that maybe the people were just fed up, and they'll take anything that came along.
Oh, that could be possible.
And she came along,
But
and she
still,
also was
that's-
attractive. Let me tell you something. There is something to be said for attractive people. I don't care what anybody says. When you are attractive, you have a little bit more of an advantage over us ugly people. You do.
That could be why we didn't win the election last year.
That's probably why we didn't. Well, no, you could have won if you were attractive. Maybe it was me. I detracted from you. Somebody said, they said, look, what's he doing with that fat guy? What's he doing with that big fat Italian guy? Get him out of there. I'll tell you who I had spoken to yesterday. Fun guy, by the way. Fun guy. He's one of our customers. His name is Steve Solomon. And Steve Solomon has this show out that's been on Broadway for 2 years. And it's now running around Florida at this point. It's called My Mother Was Italian, My Father Was Jewish, and I'm in Therapy. Now, it's been advertised a lot, and Steve is a very, very funny guy. He started out late in life. He was close to 40 when he started out doing comedy because he was an assistant principal in the school system up in New York State, in fact, around New York City, and he decided that he didn't want to do that anymore. He wanted to get into comedy. So he did, and he wrote this one-man show called My Mother Is Italian, My Father Is Jewish, and I Am in Therapy. And he's working on the second one, which is called My Mother's Italian, My Father's Jewish, and I'm in Therapy too. So, but it's very funny. In fact, next week we're going to play a little section of the CD on the air because it happens to be a very, very funny show. Steve is a nice guy. We sat in my office for about over an hour and we reminisced about people we knew in the business. We knew the same agents. We knew the same stars, because when I started the business years ago, my first run into the business was being the master of ceremonies at the Bitter End down in the Greenwich Village in New York City. I used to bring on acts such as Richard Pryor and David Brenner, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I'd get out there for a couple of minutes, tell a few little jokes, and then next guy be ready, he'd come out and do his 15, 20 minutes. So my job was to make sure the show kept flowing. We also did a show down there. It was written by some people that we knew called Manfred, which was a parody on Lord Byron's life. It was a musical. So that was being performed down at the Bitter End at the time, and that's how I started there. And we knew the same people. We knew Harry Steinman, who was an agent up for Myron Cohen and some of the great comics in New York, who played the Catskills. We knew King Broder, who was not a big agent, but he certainly around the New York area was well known. He handled Jerry Vale. Anybody around the New York area he handled. Jimmy Roselli was part of it. So we had a lot of nice conversations about some of the people in the business, and it's nice to do that, to reminisce of that nature. But another thing happened to me, which I thought was rather strange. I'm on Facebook, and because I'm on Facebook, my buddy sends me an email, and he says, I found something you might be interested in. And he sent it to me, and what it was, and you'll be interested in this, John, it was a clip from the Jersey Journal from 1966, and I don't know if you remember, Nat Berg.
Nat Berg.
Nat Berg had a column, and he was one of those columns, he was like a gossip columnist. He told you what was going on around town.
I remember Berg had a column in the Jersey Journal,
Yeah,
right?
what the politicians were doing. Well, the lead story on this particular day in 1966, and I don't know what the date is because he's sending me the piece, Dennis DelleFave has joined Jimmy Roselli's entourage, and he's going to be working in a public relations capacity in Las Vegas for 4 weeks. Now, I never knew that piece was in there. Nobody ever told me about it before. I never read the paper at that time. So this guy sends me this thing. I said, this is news to me. So it was kind of nice, though. It was kind of nice to see that this was in the paper. And apparently at that time, that was a big deal, me going with him, because Jimmy was at his height of his popularity in 1966. He was playing the Ed Sullivan Show. He was on Merv Griffin. His records were in the top 25 at the time. He had 2 Italian records in the top 50 of the rock and roll era, which was very unusual. So things were going well. So this guy sent me this thing, and I said, geez, this guy is Ernie D'Angelo, lovely guy, great guy, him and his wife Carol, and they're just wonderful people. And